golf concentration. Stop trying to focus on golf. Start building focus. Stop trying to focus on your shot and start building focus. It's two different things. Think about something that may have been repeating in your golf for longer than you realize. Not every shot, not every round, but often enough for you to know it. You arrive on the course with good intentions. You want to play well. You know your swing is better than some of the shots you produce. You have seen it on the range. You have felt it. You know it exists. And yet, when the shot starts to matter, to really matter, something change, not always in a dramatic way. Sometimes it is a very small, a little rush, a little doubt, a little extra thought, a little voice saying, don't miss this one, don't miss the shot. Of course, very helpful for you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. Here is the point. The small moment matters. That small moment matters because a lot of golf is decided before the club moves. Not all of it. Technique, of course, matters. Technique matters deeply. Without technique, there is no solid golf to protect, okay? But on the course, concentration can interfere before your technique gets a fair chance. Not concentration has a nice word. Not concentration has something we hope will appear, but concentration has a skill. Something you can build, something you can return to, something that helps your technique show up when it matters, because many golfers think the problem is that they are not trying hard enough to focus. I don't think that is usually true. Most golfers are trying very hard sometimes, but that is part of the problem only. Because trying harder to focus is not the same as knowing how to focus. Huge difference. You can stand over the ball and say, focus, concentrate, stay calm, trust it. And those are beautiful words, very elegant, but often completely useless because the mind does not obey slogans under intensity. And yes, I am using that word carefully, not pressure, as if we are diffusing a bomb. This is just golf. But there is intensity. The intensity of wanting to hit a good shot, the intensity of caring, the intensity of not wanting to waste another round, the intensity of not wanting to look ridiculous in front of our group, which, let's be honest, golf offer has a free service. And that intensity change everything. It can make your attention unstable. It can make your body rush. It can make your decision less clear. It can make the shot feel heavier than it really is. And this is where many golfers misunderstand the problem. They think, I need to concentrate more. But perhaps the real truth is, I have never built a reliable way back to concentration. That is the turning point. Because again, in golf as in life, the challenge is not avoiding interference. It is knowing what to do when it appears. Interference will appear. A bad thought, a memory of the last mistake, someone watching, a silly comment from a player partner, a scorecard that suddenly looks too important, a putt that feels shorter than your confidence. It will appear, it will happen always. The question is not whether your mind will ever wander. It will. Your mind will wander. The question is, do you have a way back? That is concentration. Not perfect focus. Return again and again. The best players understand this. They do not play because their mind is silent. No one's mind is silent. They play because they know how to come back. That's why you see routines. That's why you see repeated gestures. That's why you see them restart. The glow, the breath, the look, the pause, the same rhythm, the same time, the same order. It is not madness. Well, sometimes it looks like madness, but it is trained control. It is a way of telling the mind we are not following every thought today. We are following the cue, the process. And that is what most amateur golfers are missing. Not effort, direction. Because without direction, attention will go anywhere. To the water, to the bunker, to the people watching, to the last bad hole, to the future score, to the thought, if I pair this, maybe the round is saved. Dangerous thought, very dramatic, very golf. And when we wonder why the stroke, why the shot changes, of course it changes. The mind was no longer with the shot. It was traveling. And golf does not reward a traveling mind very often, as we know. So now let me be very clear. This is not about blaming the mind. The mind is doing what it does. It scans, it protects, it remembers, it predicts. Sometimes it is useful. Sometimes it behaves like a nervous caddy with too much coffee. And the job is not to fight it. The, the important thing is to train attention. That is different. And this is where concentration becomes practical. Concentration is not think of nothing, okay? I don't believe in that. I don't meditate so much as empty mindfulness. So concentration is not thinking of nothing. That is impossible for most people. It's impossible for me. And honestly, not very useful, I believe. Concentration is selecting what matters, then returning to it when the mind leaves. That is the skill. Selection, return, stability. And once you understand this, golf begins to look totally different. A bad shot is not only a bad shot. It may be a clue. Where did the attention go? What pulled it away? What did I fall instead of the cue? And when you start asking better questions, you stop making the same mistakes blindly. You begin to see the structure behind your inconsistency. And that is powerful. Because if you can recognize what pulls your attention away, you can begin to build the way back. And this is where concentration becomes the first piece of the mental golf process. Not the whole process, but the key piece, because without concentration, tools have nowhere to land. Without concentration, technique does not get clean access. Without concentration, confidence becomes unstable. And without concentration, one mistake can become free. We have all done it. One bad shot, then another because we are still thinking about the first, then a third. Now you are thinking about the fact that you are still thinking about the first. Well, a beautiful disaster, very expensive one, and completely human. But it does not have to stay that way. This is where the promise begins. You stop trying to first focus, and you start building a way back to focus. You stop feeling mentally scattered before the shot, and you start feeling clear enough to let your technique show up. That is the big shift. And it may not look spectacular from outside. That is the funny thing. From outside, someone may only see you pause, look, settle, then swing. Nothing dramatic. But inside, everything is different. You are no longer negotiating with noise. You are following something. You are following something clear. And clear can feel really calm. I say this often because it matters. Calm is not always something you create directly. Sometimes calm is what appears when attention knows where to go. That is why saying calm down rarely helps. Has anyone calmed down because someone said calm down? Not many, especially not golfers. But give the mind a clear cue, a clear image, a clear task, a clear return point, and suddenly the body has a better chance. The shot has a better chance. The technique has a better chance to appear. That is the whole idea. Your technique might be good, but it needs the right conditions. And concentration is one of those conditions. Now, there are three important moves here. Not full routines, not the complete system, but three principles that begin to change everything. First, recognize what pulls your attention away. This sounds simple. It is not always easy because golfers often only notice the bad shot. They do not notice the mental drift before the bad shot. But if you look closely, you might see it. Maybe you rush when someone is watching. Maybe you overthink when the shot is important. Maybe you lose structure when the round is going well. Maybe you become careful after a mistake. Maybe your mind starts calculating score too early, which is a crime many golfers commit with great enthusiasm. Recognition is the start, not judgment, recognition. Because what you cannot recognize, you cannot redirect. Second thing, cut the mental noise that does not belong to the shot. Not by fighting it, but by refusing to make it leader. There is a difference. If the thought says, don't go right, don't slice, you do not need to debate it. You do not need to hold a meeting. You do not need to invite the whole committee of doubts. You simply return to what matters. Target, shape, tempo, contact, cue. Whatever the right cue is for that player and that situation. This is important because different golfers need different cues. That is why copying someone else's routine often fails, because golfers do not lose focus in the same way. So the way back to focus cannot be the same for everyone. And third thing, return to the performance cue that matters, the ones that really matters. Not 10 cues, one useful cue, the really important performance cue. This is where the game becomes clearer because before many bad shots, there are too many instructions. Head still, smooth swing, do not rush, finish high, do not slice. Remember the lesson, avoid the water, be confident, smile, apparently. At some point, the brain says, absolutely not. and the body produces something unusual. The emergency swing. We know that one. So concentration needs simplicity. Not because golf is simple. Golf is not simple, but execution needs simplicity, especially when the shot matters. And that is what focus gives you: a clear priority, a useful direction, a return point. And once that begins to develop, micro changes appear. You may not become a different golfer overnight. Good, because that would be suspicious. But you may notice something: a little less rush, a cleaner decision, a shorter recovery after a bad shot, a better pause before the shot, a strong sense that you are not being dragged by the moment. Contact may improve. Distance control may improve. Putting may feel less crowded, and the first tee may feel less like a public speaking event without clubs, okay? And the course may begin to feel a little less random. Not easy. Golf does not do easy, but more playable, more workable, more yours. And that is a beautiful change. Because golf should be a passion. It shouldn't be a sequence of frustrations interrupted by one good shot, although one good shot is very persuasive. That is how golf keeps us: one good shot and suddenly all is forgiven. Ridiculous game, wonderful game. But we deserve to enjoy more of it. And that begins when we understand this. Concentration is not a personality trait. It is not something only calm people have. It is not something reserved for professionals. It is not something that appears because you care enough. Concentration is built and returned to and trained. That is why this day, Concentration Day, matters. Because once you stop seeing focus as a wish, you can start seeing as a structure, a skill, a foundation. And when that happens, the whole journey changes. Because the player who has a way back to focus is not the same player as the one who only hopes to stay focused. And that is an identity shift. You stop being someone who waits to feel ready. You become someone who knows how to return. And that is power. That is very much powerful. It is very different from trying to be perfect. Perfect golf is not the goal. Repeatable return is the goal, because if you can return, you can recover. If you can recover, you can protect the round. If you can protect the round, you can let more of your technique appear. And that is what mental golf reset is about. Not replacing technique, never. Technique matters enormously. But building the focus that lets your technique show up when it matters. That is the promise. And today is the first door. Concentration not has effort, has return. Not has tension, has direction. Not has silence, has control of attention. And if today helped you see what begins to change when attention is trained the right way, that is exactly why we created See the Shot. Because See the Shot is about the tools that help your attention become useful before the shot. Visualization, focus cues, anchoring, the foundations. Not soft ideas, but practical tools. The kind that help you stop feeding the noise and start giving the mind something better to follow. Because the shot does not need a louder mind. It needs a clearer one. And in golf as in life, sometimes the reset is more powerful than trying harder. So today, ask yourself one question. When your focus breaks before the shot, where does it usually go? That answer may show you more than you think. And tomorrow, we go one step deeper. And if you are still here, I want to thank you and ask you to like this content to receive more guidance, because in goal as in life, recognizing what usually happens and have an anticipated plan to use it in your favor is halfway to success. Thank you and see you next time.